A retired war hero receives a tip about his long-lost military K9, leading him into a web of gang violence, government corruption, and unfinished wars. As he reunites with his injured companion, he forms a resistance with old allies to dismantle the criminal empire threatening his town. Along the way, a former enemy seeks redemption, and a mercenary known only to ghosts steps into the battlefield. What began as a rescue becomes a reckoning, and when the last shot is fired, the question remains, can a man shaped by war find peace in a world still healing? Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. He thought the war had ended the day he turned in his uniform, but war, he would learn, never really ends. It just waits. The air outside was thick with dust and tension as Cole Merrick stepped out of his rusted pickup truck, the kind of vehicle that had long since stopped turning heads in the forgotten parts of Tennessee. His boots hit the gravel beside a warehouse soaked in late afternoon sun, its rusted metal skin glowing faintly under the weight of silence. There was nothing here for a man to trust. Not the warped siding, not the cracked windows, and certainly not the stillness that wrapped around the place like a warning. Inside, he already knew what he would find. The message hadn't come with words. It had come with a photograph slipped beneath the front door of his cabin. No note, no explanation, just a blurry, heartbreaking image of a dog he thought he'd lost forever. Diesel. His partner, his brother, his ghost. The warehouse reeked of mildew and old metal, its insides lit by a single bulb hanging like a noose in the center of the ceiling, and in the back, behind discarded crates and broken pallets, was the chain and the dog. Cole stopped walking long before he reached him. Diesel was lying on his side, ribs showing through matted fur, a raw wound above his eye, and a chain so tight around his neck that every breath came with effort. The German Sheppard opened his eyes at the sound of Cole's boots. For a second, just a second, the light in those eyes flickered. Diesel, Cole whispered. The dog didn't move, didn't whine, didn't bark, just stared, as if he couldn't believe it either. Cole crouched, his throat closing up. He reached slowly, voice cracking. "I got you, boy." The chain was locked with a steel clasp, military-grade, old and deliberate, not something a junkie or thief would use. No, this was meant to hold him, to humiliate him, to send a message, and the message was received. It wasn't random. Cole's hands moved gently, unwinding the chain as Diesel's breathing steadied. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from rage held back by discipline. Someone did this. Someone wanted him to see it. He lifted Diesel carefully into his arms. The dog didn't resist, just rested his head against Cole's chest. It had been nearly 4 years since they'd been separated in Afghanistan. 4 years thinking Diesel was dead, but Diesel had survived. And whoever had kept him alive this long hadn't done it out of kindness. Outside, the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows that stretched across the truck like fingers. That's when he heard the engines. 4 bikes at first, then 2 more. The sound was unmistakable, deep, throaty roars from custom exhausts, the kind that said power and menace more than speed. They came in from both sides of the road, trapping the truck in a pincer. Cole laid Diesel on the passenger seat and shut the door slowly. Then he turned around to face them, the iron vultures. He recognized the emblems stitched on their vests, the skeletal vulture clutching a smoking rifle. He'd seen it before in a CIA file folder back when he still had clearance. Domestic biker, gang, ex-military ties, rumored to be involved in weapons trafficking, hired intimidation and worse. But they were just whispers then, phantoms in reports. Now they were real, flesh and blood, leather and chains. The lead rider was the only one not wearing a helmet, Tall, built like a soldier but with eyes that carried no loyalty, only the kind of casual cruelty that takes years to cultivate. A jagged scar sliced across his chin like a signature. His name was Ryder Nash. Cole knew the name because he'd seen it on a different list once. The simplicity of knowing who you are when everything's on fire. And now, he shrugged, now it's more complicated, but maybe that's not a bad thing. She didn't reply, just nodded and let him have the silence again. That evening, Cole walked through the streets as the sun dipped low. People waved, some stopped him to talk, most just nodded with the kind of respect that didn't require conversation. He passed the new library, the rebuilt diner, the market where volunteers handed out supplies to anyone who asked. He saw faces he didn't recognize, people who'd moved in from towns that hadn't been able to hold their own. They came to Ashfield because Ashfield had stood, not just because of Cole or Diesel or the team, but because enough people decided. Fear wasn't going to write their story. Near the edge of town, he reached the old barn. His barn. Inside, the shelves were lined with gear he hadn't touched in weeks. Not because he didn't need it, but because he hadn't needed to carry it every day. He sat on the porch steps, with Diesel curled beside him. The stars came out slowly. He remembered the first night he brought Diesel back, the weight of the chain that had been wrapped around his neck, the look in his eyes. They'd both been carrying something then, something too heavy to speak. Now it felt lighter. He rubbed Diesel's ears, and the dog leaned into him with a soft sigh. "You did good, boy." Diesel's tail thumped once, then again. The door creaked behind him. Travis stepped out, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Cole, then sat without a word. They stared at the sky together, steam rising from their cups. "You ever think we'd make it this far?" Travis asked. "No," Cole admitted. "But I'm glad we did." Travis raised his cup in a quiet toast to the ones who stood. Cole clinked his cup against it, and for the first time in a long time, there was no weight behind the silence, just rest, just peace, and the knowledge that sometimes, when you fight for what matters, when you hold your ground even when everything tells you to run, sometimes you win. Not in headlines, not in history books, but in the lives that get to keep going, in the streets that stay quiet, in the town that learns to believe again, in the dog that never gave up, and in the man who learned. Finally, that home wasn't a place on a map, it was a choice. He stood awkwardly at first, hands in his pockets, voice quiet. "I followed the wrong people," he said, "not because I believed in them, because I didn't believe in anything else." He looked up, eyes hard and honest. "But this town gave me a second chance, and I won't waste it." No one clapped, not right away. Instead, someone stood and walked over and put a hand on his shoulder, then another. That meant more than applause. Near the end of the evening, as lanterns were lit and kids chased each other with glow sticks, Cole walked Diesel through the square one last time. The dog moved slow but sure, stopping occasionally for a pat on the head or a gentle word. A little girl knelt beside him and gave him a small fabric flower. "For being brave," she whispered. Cole watched as Diesel accepted it without flinching, tail thumping once against the grass. As darkness settled in and stars filled the sky, music floated through the air, soft, simple. People danced, not wild, not loud, just swaying side by side. Samira joined Cole by the fountain. "You think this lasts?" she asked. Cole looked around, at Diesel, at the town, at the scars that hadn't gone away but no longer bled. "It doesn't have to last forever," he said, "just long enough for them to believe it can." And in that moment, it did. Ashfield stood whole, together, alive. The wind swept gently through the trees lining the northern ridge of Ashfield, moving the tall grass in soft waves. Cole stood at the top of the hill, looking down on the town that had once felt like a battleground. The rooftops shimmered in the morning sun, church bells rang out from the newly restored steeple, and kids on bicycles wove between vendors setting up for the weekend market. Nothing about the view said danger anymore. Nothing said fear. Just life moving forward. Diesel stood at Cole's side, no longer limping, no longer watching every movement with suspicion. His scars remained, but they blended into the thick coat that had grown back over time. He was still lean, still alert, but he moved differently now, calm, grounded, like something had settled in his bones that hadn't been there before. The two of them stayed on that hill for a long time. Cole hadn't planned on staying in Ashfield as long as he had. At first, it had been about the mission, about stopping Ryder, stopping Voss, pulling the town back from the brink. Then it became about rebuilding, supporting the civilians, guiding those who'd once followed the wrong path. But now it was something else. He didn't know what to call it. Peace, maybe. Or purpose. Something quieter than war, but just as powerful. Below, in the square, a small crowd had gathered for the unveiling of a monument. Not a statue, not a military plaque, just a curved steel wall with names etched along its surface. People who had stood up, people who had fallen, people who had chosen to protect instead of fear. The list wasn't long, but every name had weight. Jax read the opening dedication. He stood tall in front of the crowd, wearing a new shirt with the Community Alliance patch stitched on the sleeve. His voice no longer trembled. His eyes met those in front of him. And when he paused, it was to breathe, not to gather courage. Cole didn't go down to the square. He didn't need to. He'd spoken enough, done enough. Let the next ones carry it now. Behind him, Samira walked up the hill. She didn't speak right. Away, just stood beside him, hands in her jacket pockets, looking out over the same view. "They want to name the new community wing after you," she said. "No," he replied. "They'll do it anyway." He smirked. "Then let them do it after I'm gone." She smiled faintly. "You thinking about leaving?" "Thinking," he said. "Not sure yet." Samira nodded. "Well, if you go, don't disappear. This place still needs a shadow it can count on." "I thought you didn't believe in shadows." "Only the ones that protect." They stood in silence. The breeze carried the sound of music drifting from the square, light and airy. Diesel wagged his tail once, then lay down in the grass, his eyes half closed. "Do you ever miss it?" Samira asked. "The old rhythm, the noise?" Cole thought about it, about desert heat, about radio static, about missions run in the dark with lives balanced on every step, about comrades who didn't come home, about enemies that didn't always wear a uniform. "I miss the clarity," he said. "Deputy from across county lines." He extended a folder. "Regional Task Force wants to adopt your model," he said. "This isn't just a town anymore. It's a hub." Cole looked at the folder, then out at the people moving like gears in a machine powered by something stronger than obligation. "It's not mine," he said. "It's theirs." The deputy smiled. "Still, you built the first brick." Cole didn't argue. That night the town lit lanterns in the square, not for a vigil, not for a warning, just for light, for hope. People gathered under the warm glow, sipping coffee, laughing soft, not celebrating, just living, just being. Cole sat on the edge of the fountain with Diesel at his feet. Samira joined him, handing him a mug of something hot. "You think they'll keep it going?" she asked. "They already are," Cole replied. And he was right, because something had shifted. Ashfield wasn't a survivor anymore. It was a foundation, and the ripple was just beginning. The square was different that day, not because of the decorations or the stage they built out of donated plywood, but because no one was afraid anymore. People gathered with chairs, blankets, and folding tables lined with food. Laughter came easy. Music played low on an old speaker, wired to the community center. There were no fences, no armed guards, only eyes that watched not from suspicion, but from care. Cole stood at the edge of it all, arms crossed, Diesel lying at his feet. The dog wore his old service vest again, stitched up and faded, the flag patch still clinging to the fabric like it didn't want to let go. Kids passed by and saluted him with clumsy hands and big smiles. Diesel just blinked slowly, his calm, gaze resting on each of them in turn, as if to say, "I see you. Claire approached with a clipboard and a notepad, her cheeks flushed from too much sun and too many handshakes. "They want you to say a few words," she said. Cole raised an eyebrow. "They're dedicating the garden today, putting up a plaque. You should be the one." He looked past her to the corner of the square where new trees had been planted, small and thin but growing fast. The garden beds were full, vegetables, flowers, herbs, all of it maintained by volunteers. It used to be a vacant lot where the Iron Vultures held their first meeting. Now it was a place for families to sit, for healing. "I'm not a speaker," he said. Claire smiled. "You don't have to be. Just tell them what this meant." Later, when the sun dipped just enough to soften the heat, the ceremony began. People gathered in a wide circle around the garden. Mariah held her son's hand. Beck stood with the patrol crew. Jax hung back, arms folded, quiet but proud. Samira and Travis flanked the stage, watching over the crowd without saying a word. Cole stepped up with Diesel beside him. The crowd hushed, not out of formality, but respect. He didn't speak right away. He looked at the trees, at the soil, at the worn flag on Diesel's vest. Then he looked out at the faces, young, old, scared, brave. All of them shaped by what? They'd come through. "This isn't about a fight we won," he said, voice low and steady. "It's about what we built after." He paused, the words slow but sure. "They tried to make us afraid, tried to divide us. But we didn't break. We chose to stand, and not just for ourselves, for each other." He looked down at Diesel, then back at the crowd. "And this dog, he was a soldier. He fought beside me, saved lives, and when they took him, they thought it would break me. But he came back. He stood up. Just like all of you." Someone in the crowd wiped a tear. Another clapped, then more, until the square filled with quiet, genuine applause, not for a speech, but for a truth they all shared. A boy stepped forward with a wooden box. Inside was a bronze plaque. He handed it to Cole without saying a word. Cole held it up. It read, "For those who rose when it would have been easier to fall." He crouched beside the nearest tree and pressed the plaque into the soil. The crowd stayed for hours afterward. People told stories, some funny, some painful. Mariah spoke about the day she came home after being taken, not about fear, but about what it felt like to be welcomed back. Travis shared how he'd nearly walked away from it all, thinking he didn't have a place in a peaceful world. Samira recounted the day they decided to set the trap at the airbase, and how close they came to losing everything. Even Jack spoke. The sun rose quietly over Ashfield, casting long orange streaks across the patchwork of new rooftops and gravel roads. In the town square, the flag stood taller than it ever had before, recently repaired after months of wind had frayed the edges. Beneath it, people gathered with a kind of routine that didn't exist 6 months ago. Patrol schedules were posted, volunteer assignments handed out, radios checked. It wasn't martial law, it was organization, controlled, focused, and owned by the people. Cole watched from a distance as Beck handed out a batch of updated comlinks to the sector captains. Samira stood nearby with a map tucked under her arm, pointing out rotation routes and coverage gaps with the efficiency of a seasoned strategist. Jax was there too, walking beside a group of new volunteers, 3 from neighboring towns recently, integrated into what they now called the Regional Alliance. It had started small. After the files Cole and his team leaked went public, there'd been a wave of interest. Other towns, rural counties, even city blocks had reached out asking how Ashfield had survived. They didn't want press briefings or op-eds. They wanted blueprints, playbooks, the truth, straight from the people who had lived it. So Ashfield had given it to them. Samira led the tactical breakdowns, adapting drills for civilians. Travis focused on logistics, supply caches, travel plans, defense without escalation. Beck and Claire created community protocols, neighborhood check-ins, safe house rotations, medical triage chains. Cole, as always, stayed at the edge, stepping in only when necessary. This wasn't about war anymore. It was about resilience, and they weren't alone. From the south, Jackson sent 2 veteran medics to assist in establishing an emergency field center. To the north, Riverbend offered a mobile signal tower and software specialists to help harden the town's communications grid. Even retired law enforcement from as far as Nashville began volunteering to train young watch leaders in de-escalation. Tactics? It wasn't flashy, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Diesel became a quiet legend through it all. Every time Cole walked him through town, people stopped. Children came running with treats. Shopkeepers leaned down to scratch behind his ears. He accepted it all with calm dignity, never losing that quiet awareness in his eyes. He'd become the thread that tied memory to progress. The dog, who had been chained, broken, and survived, now walked free through streets that had once burned. One afternoon, a group from Pine Hollow arrived. 10 families. They'd fled when their town was overtaken by a criminal ring mimicking the Iron Vultures model. Ashfield welcomed them. No hesitation. Rooms were found, blankets laid out, schedules adjusted. Cole helped move boxes into a converted schoolhouse. As he carried the last one through the door, a man in his early 40s stopped him. "You're Merrick," the man said. "You're the one who started all this." Cole paused, set the box down, wiped his hands on his jeans. "I just helped a dog get home," he said. That night a storm rolled in from the east. The winds rattled the trees hard enough to shake old memories loose. Cole sat in the barn with Diesel, checking generator reserves and walking through backup procedures with 2 of the new volunteers. Thunder cracked. The power blinked once, then steadied. No panic, no scrambling, just action. When the roof creaked under the force of the gusts, one of the volunteers tensed. Cole noticed. He handed the young man a flashlight. "Scared?" he asked. The kid nodded. "So was I," Cole said. "Still am. But fear's not the end. It's the beginning of paying attention." Outside, the wind howled for hours, but the lights stayed on. The people stayed connected. No one slept much, but no one felt alone either. In the morning, the damage was minimal. Some downed limbs, a few broken shingles. Within hours, the entire network mobilized. Branches cleared, roofs patched, roads reopened. It wasn't about speed. It was about unity. Samira stood in the square, clipboard in hand, surrounded by a dozen people from 6 different towns. They were joking, debating, organizing. Diesel walked through the center of it, tail swaying, stopping for water and a scratch. Cole stood by the doorway of the old post office, arms folded, watching it all unfold. A man approached, his uniform clean, badge gleaming. Not the gunmetal haze that hung over the town when Cole first returned with Diesel battered in the truck bed. In place of smoke, now came the quiet sound of hammering, the hiss of paint rollers, and the laughter of neighbors. It was a town reclaiming itself, not just from an enemy, but from fear. Cole walked the dirt path behind the hospital, Diesel trotting steadily at his side. The dog's limp had lessened, though the scar above his flank remained, a pale, hairless memory. They passed the new greenhouse the community had built, run by teenagers and teachers. Cole nodded to a familiar face working the door, Jax Rourke. The kid waved back with a smudge of soil across his cheek, wearing a shirt with no insignia, no patch, just a line of sweat down his spine and a second-hand name tag clipped crooked at his collar. 3 weeks ago, Jax had been little more than a symbol of everything Ashfield wanted to forget. He was a former vulture, a witness to crimes he couldn't fully explain, a bystander too afraid to stand anywhere else. Now he was proof that redemption wasn't just something you talked about, it was something you built with your own hands. Cole had watched it happen in small moments. Jax showing up early to unload shipments, Jax holding back tears when Mrs. Brodie, the grocer, finally shook his hand. Jax stepping between 2 arguing neighbors and reminding them that their real fight had already ended. He wasn't alone. 3 more former vultures had come forward, each in their own time. One was a mechanic who now repaired city vehicles. Another had started volunteering at the animal shelter. The third had joined Beck's patrol rotation, unarmed but present. Always present. Not everyone was ready to forgive. Some never would, but slowly the lines blurred. They weren't erasing the past. They were reshaping it. Travis had taken it upon himself to train the former gang members who asked for it. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't hold back. He pushed them like he did the civilians. Harder, maybe, but fair. He barked orders, made them run drills until they puked, and then nodded without smiling when they stood up again. Samira kept her distance from most of them, but Cole noticed the way she observed their movements during drills, the way she quietly marked progress. She said little, but her approval, when given, meant something more than words. Ashfield had changed, more than just safer. It was growing into something new, a place that learned to face its own ghosts. That week, Cole was invited to a town council meeting. He wasn't on the roster. He didn't want a seat or a vote. But when they opened the floor to community feedback, he stood. He spoke slowly, his voice even. You asked what keeps towns safe. It's not guns, not walls. It's connection. When people know their neighbors, when they talk to each other, they don't need men like me. He looked around at the crowd. Old faces, young ones, a few scars here and there. But when they do need us, they should know where to find us. The room was silent when he finished, not because they didn't understand, but because they did. After the meeting, Claire approached him in the hallway. We're drafting a new civilian-military alliance, she said. Locals and veterans working together to handle emergencies. Mutual accountability. Jax asked if he could help run it. Cole raised an eyebrow. Claire smiled. He said it might be time to stop being the kid everyone looks at sideways and start being someone worth trusting. He didn't say anything at first. Then finally, he's earned the shot. Later that night, Cole walked the perimeter of the town alone, like he used to when the threats were still close. Diesel followed. No leash needed. The moon hung low, over the hills. He passed by the diner, lights dimmed, laughter echoing from inside. He saw Samira sitting by the window with Beck, probably discussing logistics. Travis leaned against the wall outside, nursing a root beer like it was something stronger. Cole didn't go in. He just kept walking, past the homes with porch lights glowing, the repaired fences, the new radio tower blinking quietly in the distance. Walked until the noise faded, and the only sound left was his own footsteps on gravel and Diesel's beside him. At the edge of town, he stopped and looked back. It didn't look like the place where everything had started, not anymore. It looked like something new, something earned, she said. I've been assigned to escort you to the capital. You won't be expected to speak if you don't want to, but your presence matters. Cole looked past her, toward the hills. Then he nodded once. Samira and Travis met him halfway, through the drive. She had traded her usual combat gear for a pressed jacket and black slacks. Travis hadn't changed a thing. Flannel, jeans, and a scowl he made no effort to hide. They rode the rest of the way in silence. Diesel slept with his head on Cole's boot, twitching now and then, dreaming of something far away. Jackson was different, not untouched, but removed from the fire. The buildings were newer, the faces on the sidewalks less weathered. There were no bullet holes in the stop signs, no smoke stains on the brick, but there were flags everywhere, and banners hung from the Capitol steps, honoring our own. Cole hated it. Not the recognition, but the noise, the speeches, the politicians who'd sat silent while towns burned, now taking photos with survivors. He stood at the edge of the stage, arms crossed, eyes scanning the crowd like he expected the vultures to show up one last time. The ceremony was brief. Names were read, flags were folded, families were mentioned. When the governor took the podium, the crowd stilled. We are here today, not just to honor those who protected our communities, he said, but to acknowledge what happens when ordinary citizens, veterans and patriots take responsibility for each other. He gestured to the side of the stage, to Cole Merrick and Diesel, and to those who stood with them. There was applause, some loud, some slow. Cole didn't move. The governor approached him directly, hand extended. Cole shook it, because not doing so would have drawn more attention. He said nothing, just nodded. Later, during the press mingling, Cole slipped away, found a quiet alley behind the building. Diesel followed. Samira found him minutes later, 2 coffees in hand. She passed him one and leaned against the wall beside him. "You did good," she said. Cole shook his head. "I showed up. That's not the same." "It is to them," she replied. "You gave them a story that doesn't end in fire." Travis joined them, chewing on a toothpick and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. 3 news stations, he muttered. I counted. One guy tried to ask if I regretted anything. I told him, yeah, I regret not hitting the detonator sooner. Samira laughed. Cole didn't. That night, the team was honored at a private dinner. Smaller, no cameras, just local leaders, a few military brass, and representatives from other towns. What surprised Cole were the guests who came from out of state, veterans, who had heard about what happened in Ashfield, men and women who'd seen their own communities start to crack under pressure and wanted to know how to stop it. They didn't want speeches. They wanted guidance, tactics, unity. Cole didn't give them strategy. He gave them truth. Start small, he told them. Start with your neighbors. Build the trust before the fight comes. Don't wait until you're being burned down. Was it worth it? One of them asked. A woman from Indiana, sharp eyes, former intelligence. Cole thought about that for a long moment. Ask me in 5 years, he said, when we're not just reacting anymore. Back in Ashfield, they returned to a quieter reception, but word had spread. More towns were reaching out. More veterans were forming response units, not vigilantes, protectors, community-integrated, patient, prepared. Claire helped coordinate training schedules. Mariah handled outreach. Jax began mentoring. Others, who wanted to leave groups like the Vultures and start over. And Diesel became something more than a symbol. He was the one thing people smiled at without thinking. The one who made children feel safe. The one who reminded everyone that survival wasn't enough. You had to live after. One evening, as the sun went down and the air cooled, Cole stood at the edge of the rebuilt hospital garden, Diesel beside him. Samira walked up, nodding toward the gathering behind them. "You ready to leave again?" she asked. "Not yet," Cole said. She smiled. Good, because maybe, for now, the fight was no longer about running into fire. Maybe it was about standing. Watch beside what you helped save. The sky above Ashfield held a gentler blue these days. Cole watched them avoid eye contact, watched them cross the street, but he also saw the people who gave him the benefit of the doubt. And more importantly, he saw how Jax responded. He never asked for forgiveness. He just kept working. That evening, as the rain tapered off and the sky bloomed into a warm orange haze, Cole sat on the edge of the rebuilt loading dock, watching Diesel gnaw quietly on an old length of rope. Across the street, Travis emerged. From the hardware store, covered in sawdust and smirking. "2 more roofs patched today," Travis called. "If I ever stop blowing stuff up, I might make a decent carpenter." "You're not done blowing stuff up," Cole replied. "No," Travis said with a grin. "But it's nice to build something that doesn't explode." Samira arrived minutes later, hood up, eyes scanning the street like she couldn't turn off the instinct. She sat beside Cole, resting her elbows on her knees. "They asked me to help set up a town council," she said. Cole raised an eyebrow. "I'm not joining it," she added quickly. "Just helping." He nodded. "Good. I've been thinking," she said after a long pause. "Maybe this place doesn't need people like us anymore." "They need people who know what the cost is," he said. "Not just what it looks like in pictures." They sat in silence for a while. The sky deepened to violet. The lights in the buildings blinked on one by one. People stayed out longer now, walking with kids, talking on porches. There were no patrols, no checkpoints, just quiet vigilance. Later, that night, they held a gathering in the square. Not a celebration, more like a shared breath. Food was passed around, stories were told. Mariah spoke about the night she'd been taken. Not with fear, but with clarity. Jax stood up too, his voice shaking, confessing his part in the early days of the Vultures. Some turned away, others didn't. When he sat down, a woman from the bakery reached out and touched his shoulder. That was enough. Cole didn't speak. He stayed back near the edge, Diesel at his side. Watching, when the music started, just an old guitar and a harmonica, he felt something shift. Not in the town, in himself. He wasn't healed. He never would be. But the weight on his back didn't crush him like before. Maybe that was what hope actually felt like. Not relief, not joy, just less weight. Samira found him just before midnight, her eyes softer than usual. "You leaving soon?" she asked. "Eventually," he said. "Where?" "Wherever there's another fire." She nodded. "That's what I thought." They didn't hug. They didn't shake hands. They didn't need to. Some people pass through your life like storms. Others stayed like scars. And some, like them, just walked the same road for a while before splitting off into the dark again. As the fire in the square burned low and the crowd began to scatter, Cole walked back to the truck. Diesel climbed in without hesitation. The engine started with a familiar rumble. He didn't drive off yet. He looked back once, just once, at the town he hadn't planned on saving. It was still standing, and more importantly, it was learning how to stand on its own. The phone call came just after sunrise, just as Cole was checking the perimeter fence of a new outpost south of Ashfield. The morning fog still clung to the trees, and Diesel trotted quietly behind him, stopping every so often to sniff the dirt or turn his ears toward the wind. When the phone buzzed in Cole's vest, he almost ignored it. Only one number rang on. That line anymore, one he'd set up months ago with no expectation it would ever be used. It was a government line. A clipped voice came through. Male, calm. "Mr. Merrick, the governor's office is requesting your presence in Jackson. There's to be a ceremony, public recognition." Cole stared out at the trees, wind cutting through the early silence. "No thanks. It's not a request," the voice replied. "You're not being summoned, but it would mean something to people." "What people?" "Veterans. Law. Enforcement. Town leaders. Survivors. They've asked for you by name." Cole didn't respond right away. Diesel looked up at him with those unreadable eyes, as if asking the same question. "I'll think about it," Cole said finally. "They sent a convoy 2 days later. Not black SUVs, not uniforms. Just 4 unmarked trucks and a plain grey sedan. A young woman in a blazer stepped out, clipboard in hand, respectful but stiff. Mr. Merrick, identifying safe houses and revealing a secondary network of contractors operating through shell non-profits. His intel wasn't just useful, it was critical. 3 names led directly to high-ranking defense consultants. 2 of them were already on the run. The 3rd was arrested quietly by federal agents thanks to a packet Samira delivered to a former intelligence contact in D.C. But it wasn't just about bringing down the big names. It was about rebuilding what had been broken. Mariah helped open a trauma support center at the edge of Ashfield, operating out of the same building Ryder had tried to destroy. The hospital was rebuilt with funds pulled from seized accounts. The name above the door changed to honor those who stood their ground. Travis coordinated town security with Beck and local leaders, developing training programs for civilian response teams. They weren't militias. They were protectors, people who refused to be caught off guard again. Cole didn't take credit for any of it. He worked quietly, reinforcing buildings, walking Diesel through towns that once whispered and now waved. He spoke only when needed, but everywhere he went people stopped to look, not in fear, not in awe, in thanks. Jax became a fixture at the edge of it all, never front and center, but there, always there, hauling lumber, repairing wiring, helping where he could. One evening he sat beside Cole on the hood of the truck, staring at the orange clouds above. "You think people can change?" Jax asked. Cole didn't answer immediately. He looked down at Diesel, curled up beside the tire, then at his own hands, scarred, calloused, healed. "If they choose to," he said. Jax nodded slowly. They sat in silence until the sun dropped behind the trees. That night Cole stood alone under the stars. No wind, no footsteps, just peace, fragile and uncertain. He didn't know what came next. Not really, but he knew what they'd stopped, and he knew what they'd started, and that was enough for now. A slow rain fell over the hills, soft enough to feel like a memory. It washed over cracked rooftops, ash-blackened roads, and the bullet-pocked siding of the Ashfield Hospital. But it didn't erase anything. It only softened the edges. Cole stood beneath the rusted awning outside the rebuilt community hall, arms crossed, watching volunteers carry in boxes of supplies. What used to be a target was now the center of something different, something trying to grow. It had taken weeks to get here. Weeks of meetings, rebuilding trust, fielding questions from a town unsure whether to be grateful or afraid. Some still flinched when they saw Travis, who bore his scars like armor. Others stared a little too long at Samira, uneasy with the way her eyes tracked everything. But they showed up, they asked how they could help, and they stayed. That mattered more than anything else. Diesel trotted beside Cole now with a steady, limp tail swaying low, his posture relaxed but watchful. The dog had become something of a fixture, part mascot, part protector, and part symbol of what they'd all survived. Kids ran up to him in the streets now, giggling, throwing sticks. Diesel never barked, never snapped. He just followed, watched, and lay at Cole's feet when the day grew quiet again. Inside the community hall, the noise buzzed with life. Hammering, laughter, debate. Mariah ran logistics with the precision of a combat officer, clipboard in hand, hair tied back, directing volunteers as they sorted through new medical supplies and equipment. Claire coordinated communication, dispatching check-ins to surrounding towns through the new secure radio net Samira had helped them install. Beck trained volunteers in crowd control, evacuation drills, and what to do if anything even smelled. Like trouble, Cole didn't lead them. He didn't have to. The town had found its rhythm. He was just there to make sure it kept beating. Still, rebuilding brought its own weight. Every time they tore down old walls or raised new ones, they had to decide what stayed behind and what was worth carrying forward. Some residents wanted everything to go back the way it was before, but others, like Jax, were trying to build something better from the pieces. Jax had changed. The hunched posture, the fear in his eyes, gone. He stood straighter now. He spoke, without hesitation. Most days he worked sunrise to sunset, rebuilding the structures he once helped undermine. Some still didn't trust him. The air filled with the metallic stink of blood and fear. Ryder pulled a knife. Cole ducked the first slash, blocked the second with his forearm, and slammed his fist into Ryder's throat. The man dropped, gasping. Cole grabbed the detonator. Ryder, choking, tried to rise. Cole stood over him, breathing hard. "This ends now." Ryder grinned, bloodied teeth gleaming. "You think they'll thank you? You think they'll stay safe?" "No," Cole said. "But they'll have the chance to try." He crushed the detonator under his boot. Ryder lunged again, knife raised. Cole didn't hesitate. One shot, Ryder dropped, the knife clattering to the floor. The bombs were disarmed by morning. Travis and Samira arrived minutes after the shot, working fast to disable the charges. Beck cleared the halls. The patients were returned. No lives lost. Outside the hospital, as the sun broke over the trees, Cole sat on the back steps, blood still fresh on his hands. Diesel was waiting at the truck. When Cole opened the door, the dog rested his head against his arm. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. The fight was ending, but what came next would be harder. Rebuilding never made the headlines, but it was the part that mattered most. The morning after Ryder's death carried the kind of silence that felt earned. No sirens, no helicopters, just birdsong and the slow hum of a town, unsure how to return to normal. At the hospital in Ashfield, the bomb squad had cleared the last charge. and volunteers were already scrubbing soot from the walls and hauling plywood up stairwells. It wasn't about fixing everything. It was about proving it hadn't been destroyed. Cole stood outside under a pale sky, the sun climbing weakly over the hills. His ribs ached, his stitches tugged, but he stayed upright. Diesel sat beside him, still bruised, still favoring one leg, but alert again. Proud, like he knew something had shifted. The town had been saved, but not without scars. And the people knew it. Beck joined him on the steps. He was holding a worn notebook, the kind used by soldiers and old contractors, thick with sketches, reminders, names. He opened it and handed over a folded sheet. It was a map of the old Vulture Safehouse network, hand-drawn, with notes scribbled in the margins. One mark stood out, a warehouse north of Birch Hollow. It had been circled in red. "Kid walked into the watch station this morning," Beck said. "Hands up, no fight. Said he wanted to talk to you." Cole unfolded the second page, a name, Jax Rourke. He'd seen the kid once before, during recon on a gun convoy. He was maybe 19, lean, skittish, with that heavy-lidded look of someone who thought fear meant weakness. Now he was asking for a meeting. Samira stood across the lot, leaning against the tailgate of the truck, scanning the horizon like she couldn't stop searching for threats. She watched as Cole read the note, then gave a small nod. She already knew he was going. The meeting took place that afternoon in the burned remains of a sawmill, neutral ground. Cole went alone, unarmed. Jax was already there, sitting on a concrete. In beam, wringing his hands and looking at the ground. "I didn't know they were going to do that," Jax said before Cole could speak. "The hospital, that wasn't part of it." "You stayed anyway," Cole replied. "I didn't know how to leave." Cole studied him. He looked smaller than before, the weight of all he'd seen pressing down on his shoulders like sandbags. "They pulled me in after my brother died," Jack said. "Said I could matter, said I could fight back, but it wasn't about helping people. It was never that. And now, I want to make it right," Jack said, looking up at last. "I know where they kept the shipment logs, where they laundered the cash. I remember who showed up in suits and never gave names. I'll tell you all of it." Cole didn't move. He waited. Jax swallowed hard. I need to know if I help. You're not going to treat me like one of them." Cole stepped forward. "You were one of them," he said, voice calm but firm. "But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to make sure this never happens again. You help me, you get clean. But that only works if you're willing to carry the weight of what you did," Jax nodded. "I am." The next few days were filled with extraction and exposure. Jax worked with Samira and Beck to trace the remaining accounts. Cole whispered, "Just hold on." Samira found them minutes later, breathless, bleeding from a graze to her thigh. Behind her, Travis limped with help from Beck, face pale but alive. The drive was intact. The footage, the names, the orders, everything. They needed to bring Darwin's stratagem into the light. Cole looked around at the broken airbase, the battered team, the dog still breathing at his side. They weren't supposed to survive this, but they had. Barely. And the war wasn't over. But the shadows had started to burn. They patched up what they could before sunrise. Cole's side was wrapped in gauze, tight enough to slow the bleeding, but not enough to dull the pain. Travis was propped up on an old crate, half-conscious, pale from blood loss, but awake enough to insist he could still walk. Samira cleaned her wound with whiskey and stitched it herself, gritting her teeth as if pain was just another mission parameter. Diesel rested in the shade beneath a collapsed hangar door, wrapped in a torn blanket, ribs rising and falling in shallow rhythm. No one spoke much. The airbase was quiet now, too quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't come after victory, but before retaliation. Cole knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Ryder was still out there. And if Voss had been the surgical strike, Ryder would be the hammer. No more games, no more psychological maneuvers. This would be a statement. One final move to burn everything down and prove the vultures were still standing. Cole didn't have to guess what target Ryder would choose. He knew. 3 hours later, the first warning came in over the emergency channel from Ashfield. Beck's voice, barely controlled. He's planted bombs. Under the hospital. The words froze Cole mid-step. Samira's eyes snapped up from her laptop. Travis tried to rise, but Cole put a hand on his shoulder. Where? Main structural columns, Beck said. Maintenance crawl spaces, looks like military charges, shaped. He knew what he was doing. How long? Cole asked. Best guess? They're wired for remote detonation. Could be seconds, could be hours. Cole grabbed his rifle and the medkit and started moving. Samira fell in behind him. I'm going with you, she said. No, he replied. You stay here. Watch Diesel. Coordinate evac if this goes wrong. She started to argue. He stopped her with a look. She understood. This one was his. He made it to Ashfield in under 40 minutes, pushing the truck harder than it had any right to be pushed. The hospital sat on the hill like a quiet sentinel, lights flickering, patients already being wheeled outside by nurses who didn't know where to go. Fear clung to the building like smoke. Inside, Beck met him at the rear entrance, pointing to the access panel in the basement. He's in there, Beck said. Ryder, armed, said he wants to talk. Cole didn't hesitate. He dropped through the panel, landing in the dark crawl space beneath the hospital. The concrete was cold. Pipes groaned above his head, and at the far end, lit by the dim flicker of a single work light, stood Ryder Nash. He wasn't wearing his patch. No leather vest, just a black shirt, scuffed boots, and the look of a man who had nothing left to lose. Behind him, 4 blocks of C4 gleamed under wire and sweat. The detonator rested in his palm, thumb poised. You look tired, Ryder said. Smiling like a skull, Cole kept his hands at his sides. You don't have to do this. Yes, Ryder said. I do. Why? Because we made it hurt? Because you embarrassed me. His voice cracked. You took everything, my crew, my name, that damn dog. You chained him, Cole snapped. You tortured him to get to me. I broke him, Ryder said, voice rising. And he still got up, just like you. That's the problem with your kind. You don't stay down. You lost, Cole said. No, not yet. Ryder lifted the detonator. Cole stepped forward. One more move, he said. That's what this is. But you can make it the right one. Ryder's thumb twitched. Let them live, Cole said, softer now. Just let them live. The silence stretched long. Ryder's eyes darted. Sweat rolled down his brow. And then he pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. Cole lunged. They crashed into the floor, the detonator flying across the concrete. Ryder landed a punch to Cole's face, dazing him. Cole responded with a knee to the gut. They grappled, rolled, crashed into the exposed wiring. Sparks flew. Diesel crouched low beside Cole, unmoving but alert, his breath steady, waiting. Voss wore black tactical gear, no insignia, no wasted movement. His eyes swept the corridor, calculating every wall, every angle, every shadow. He wasn't there to threaten. He was there to end it, and Cole knew it. Travis's voice cracked over the radio. They breached South Tower, 2 down, holding position. Samira responded with a clipped, "East corridor clear," but Cole didn't press his earpiece. He couldn't afford the distraction. Voss stepped forward, casual, precise. "You should have stayed quiet," Voss said. His voice was calm, the kind of calm that came from years of eliminating problems that never made the papers. All this exposure, it won't change anything. Systems endure, men don't. Cole didn't flinch. "That's why you hide behind companies. Behind mercenaries and fake causes." Voss tilted his head. "I don't hide. I remove threats. You've become one." He drew first. A silent shot cracked through the air. Cole rolled sideways behind the support beam, plaster exploding where his chest had been a second earlier. Diesel charged forward before Cole could stop him, barreling into Voss with a snarl that echoed through the corridor. The sound of flesh colliding with metal rang out. Voss grunted as Diesel slammed into his ribs, teeth locking around his arm. But he didn't scream. He pivoted, slamming Diesel against the wall, once, twice. The dog dropped, yelping but alive. Cole surged forward. He and Voss collided in the narrow corridor, fists, elbows, knees, trained hands trading years of battle experience in a blur of violence. Voss moved like a machine, no wasted motion, but Cole fought with something deeper: rage, loss, purpose. Voss landed a blow to Cole's ribs, hard enough to crack something. Cole's counter broke the man's nose. Blood sprayed the wall. Voss staggered back, pulling a blade. "You're not a soldier anymore," Voss hissed. "You're just another broken relic." Cole didn't answer. He stepped in and grabbed Voss's wrist, twisting hard. The knife clattered to the floor. Cole drove him into the wall, shoulder first, then again, then slammed a knee into his chest. Voss dropped. For a second it was over, but that second cost everything. A shot rang out from behind. Cole spun just as one of Ryder's men, bleeding but standing, fired again. The bullet grazed Cole's side, burning hot and deep. He fired back, without thinking, dropping the man where he stood. When Cole turned, Voss was gone. Blood trailed down the hall toward the main stairwell. Diesel whined, dragging himself toward Cole. Cole knelt, pressing a hand to the wound on his side. It wasn't deep, but it would slow him. "We're not done," he whispered. He keyed the mic. "Samira, Voss is inside. Escaped down B corridor. I'm wounded." Her voice came back fast, moving to intercept. "Travis, I've got charges primed. 10 seconds from light up, but I need that drive, the real one." Cole reached under the console, pulled out the hard drive with the master files, evidence connecting Voss, Ryder, stratagem. Everything. He stuffed it in Diesel's vest pouch and whispered something to the dog. Diesel stood, limping but strong. He moved as Cole pointed toward the north exit. "Go," Cole said. "Take it out." Diesel vanished down the hall, shadow and loyalty in motion. Cole picked up his rifle and followed the blood. Outside, the airbase was chaos. Smoke, gunfire, alarms. Vultures were retreating, disoriented by the explosives Travis had rigged at each. A gate. One charge detonated, sending a wave of heat across the tarmac. Samira held the east watchtower alone, sniping targets with calm precision. Then came the scream over the radio. "Travis is hit!" Cole's stomach dropped. He found Voss limping toward the hangar, blood soaking through his shirt. He held a radio, speaking into it even as he moved. "You think you win today?" Voss growled, almost to himself. "We'll bury the next version deeper." Cole stepped out from cover, raised his rifle, but before he could fire, Diesel came. Out of nowhere, charging despite the limp, despite the blood. He launched himself at Voss, jaws locking around the man's arm. Cole closed the distance and pulled the trigger. The shot hit center mass. Voss staggered, dropped, and didn't move. Again, Cole fell to one knee beside Diesel. The dog was bleeding from the shoulder, eyes dull but alive. "Hold on." Cole marked off the zones with chalk and twine, guiding Travis through blast placement. Each entry point would be rigged with directional charges, not to collapse, but to disorient. Smoke bombs, trip flares, low-frequency sound bursts. He didn't want carnage. He wanted control. Samira set the cameras, planting them in corners, in light fixtures, in the shell of a grounded aircraft that still bore a faded USF insignia. The entire grid would be streamed live to 3 satellite points, encrypted, off-site, untouchable. If they died here, the world would still know why. The bait was planted that evening. The files, the drives, a fabricated dossier laced with names connected to congressional aides and DARPA contractors. They left it on a terminal inside the control bunker, deliberately half-covered in dust, as if left behind during a panicked retreat. Then Cole made the call. It wasn't to Ryder. It wasn't to Voss. It was to a secure line routed through a stratagem subserver, buried in a fake Foundation grant. Samira had cracked the code the day before. The voice on the other end didn't ask who he was. It didn't have to. Cole said one sentence: "I know what you buried in Helmand." And then he hung up. That was enough. The countdown had begun. They settled in the bunker that night, maps on the wall, weapons laid out in quiet rows, Diesel resting at the door. The air was thick with what they didn't say. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and if Voss brought the full weight of Stratagem's shadow network, they might not walk out. But no one backed out. "Any regrets?" Travis asked around midnight. Cole sat cleaning a rifle. "Only that we didn't start sooner." Samira looked up. "He'll come fast. No mercy, no hesitation." "That's why we chose the ground," Cole said, "so we control the tempo." The next day passed in preparation. They placed decoys, dug shallow traps, wired the generator to cut power on command, forcing infrared gear into overuse. The airbase wasn't just a trap. It was a battlefield of psychological warfare. By late afternoon, the drone picked up movement. 8 motorcycles, 2 unmarked SUVs. Travis raised his head from the detonator panel. "We've got company." Cole moved to the window. Through the cracked glass, he saw them approaching. Dust curled behind the convoy like smoke from a fire, not yet lit. At the front was Ryder, unmistakable, his long coat flapping like a war banner. But it wasn't him Cole focused on. It was the black SUV behind him. When the door opened, Caleb Voss stepped out like death in a pressed jacket. No swagger, no noise, just calculation. He stood for a moment, eyes scanning the airbase with surgical precision. Then, as if on cue, he raised one hand. The vehicles fanned out. Samira adjusted the radio channel. "They're not charging. They're scouting. No, it's bait," Travis said. "They'll still go for it," Cole replied. "They need the drives, they need the files buried in that bunker." And then, as if to confirm it, Ryder began moving, not toward the bunker, but toward the cameras. "He's going to talk," Samira muttered, surprised. The feed crackled to life. Ryder stepped into frame and looked straight at the lens. "You think this proves anything?" he growled. "You think torching a depot and stealing files changes what's coming?" Cole leaned closer to the monitor. "This isn't about you, Merrick. It never was. You're just an echo, and echoes fade." He walked away. The attack began moments later. They didn't use the roads. They came through the weeds, from the blind angles Samira had predicted. Voss's signature, precision, silence, but they weren't invisible. Travis triggered the first flare, bathing the airbase in red light. Samira dropped the first 2 with silenced shots, clean and fast. Cole waited, not for Voss, but for the moment. The game shifted. It came when Diesel growled, a low warning sound that didn't come from instinct alone, but from memory. A shadow moved at the edge of the hallway. Not rushing, walking. Voss had entered the bunker, and Cole turned to meet him. No hesitation, no words, only war. The moment Voss stepped into the control bunker, the air changed. Not colder, sharper, heavier, like something old and dangerous had entered the room. Cole didn't speak. Neither did Voss. They stood at opposite ends of the dim hallway, dust swirling between them, the echo of gunfire outside pulsing like a heartbeat. They weren't just thugs trying to take over a town. They were a controlled experiment to see how private influence could overpower communities through intimidation and soft occupation. Cole ran a hand down his face. "We've been thinking." "Too small. Ryder wasn't the problem. He was a field test." "And Voss?" Samira asked. "He's the cleaner. The one you send when the test leaks outside the lab." That night, the strategy changed. No more just burning supply depots. Now they needed to go after data, people, ties to political influence. They had to tear down the scaffolding behind. The curtain. They moved to a new safe house deep in the hills outside of Lincoln County, a converted hunting lodge with solar power, a cold stream nearby, and no visible roads for 2 miles. It was primitive, but it gave them the thing they needed. Most silence. The files were duplicated again. Cole kept one on his person. Samira stashed one in a remote digital cloud routed through 5 nodes. Travis hid a third in a metal case buried beneath the floorboards. Then they hit the vultures again. Not with fire this time, but with questions. Samira intercepted their digital chatter and rerouted false messages into their ranks. Suggestions that Ryder was working with federal agents. Paranoia bloomed instantly. Within a day, one of Ryder's own lieutenants was found unconscious in a ditch, beaten and bloodied. Cole spread hard copies of the transport manifests through back channels, leaking it to ex-military watchdogs, senators with grudges, even a former FBI contact. Each leak was timed to draw attention. Not enough to spook the public, but enough to create static around stratagem. The blowback came fast. On the third night after the leak, a fire started at a community watch station in Ashfield. No casualties, but the building was gone. It was retaliation, and it was reckless. That meant they were feeling pressure, but the next sign came with silence. The usual vulture patrols vanished. The compound outside Jackson County went dark, and Ryder himself hadn't been seen in over 48 hours. "We flushed him out," Travis said. "No," Cole replied. "He's being pulled." Samira nodded slowly. "They're collapsing the cleaning house, which means Voss will go full predator now." They got confirmation the next day. At a known vulture checkpoint, 2 bodies were found. Not civilians, gang members executed, shot once through the eye, clean, clinical. Voss had started hunting his own. They were losing control, which meant the time to strike was now. "We need to draw them out," Cole said. "Force a convergence. Take Ryder, take Voss, and take their nerve center with them." "Where?" Samira asked. Cole looked down at the map. Then he tapped an old military airbase. "Long abandoned, here." She frowned. "Why there?" "Because it's empty, isolated and symbolic. We've fought our war in the shadows. Now we set the stage, and we end it in the open." He looked at Diesel, sitting alert beside the table. "And this time, we make damn sure they feel it." The old airbase was a ghost from another era. Broken hangars stretched into the horizon, like rusted ribs of a long-dead beast, their roofs sagging under years of decay. Weed-cracked runways bore the fading marks of jets that hadn't flown in decades. The last time Cole had been on ground like this, he was 30, bleeding from a shoulder wound and watching dust swirl through the mountains of Kandahar. This place didn't smell like war, not yet, but it would. They arrived under cover of darkness, headlights off, radios muted. Cole drove the lead truck, Diesel in the passenger seat, eyes watching the road like a co-pilot with scars for maps. Samira followed with the surveillance gear and enough camera drones to map every inch of the base. Travis brought the explosives. "Always the explosives. Place feels cursed," Travis muttered as they stepped out. "Good," Cole said. "Let's keep that feeling alive." Samira scouted first, sweeping the perimeter with one of the micro-drones. It buzzed silently through hangars and across rusted control towers, scanning for movement, motion sensors, anything that didn't belong. Nothing came up. The base was clean. Too clean. By sunrise, they had a working map of the facility. 4 major entry points, 3 viable ambush zones, 1 control bunker still structurally sound. That would be the nerve center. They got to work immediately. Cole's stomach dropped when Samira found a trace signature buried in the code, an old encryption tag that matched a pattern used in black site intel from 5 years ago. Voss was here, and he was already 1 step ahead. They torched the relay and went dark again, abandoning even burner channels. Face-to-face contact only, written messages on courier routes. Diesel carried one of them himself, trotting 4 miles through backwoods to deliver a sealed envelope strapped to his vest. They'd trained him for it years ago, never thinking he'd need it again. But now, the old tricks were all they had. 2 days later, the first casualty came. It wasn't one of theirs. It was a vulture found hanging upside down from a tree 15 miles south. No visible wounds, no blood, just a plastic bag tied over his head and a note pinned to his chest. Unworthy. No signature, no mark. Samira paled when she read it. This is how he works. He doesn't build armies. He cuts them down until there's no one left but the useful. Ryder brought in a wolf, Travis muttered, and wolves don't follow orders. They waited for the next move. Tension stretched thin as barbed wire. Cole barely slept. Diesel paced the cabin like a sentry, barking at shadows. Every rustle in the woods, every strange bird call set them on edge. Then a message came, delivered by hand. A young woman, no older than 20, walked up to Cole while he was fueling the truck at an abandoned station. She wore a gas station uniform, her hands trembling as she held out a folded note. "He told me to give this to you, said I wouldn't be hurt if I did." Cole unfolded it. No threats, no insults. Just a sentence written in ink, so fine it looked printed. "I've read your file. Let's see if you live up to it." Cole crumpled the paper slowly. So this was Voss. No bullets. Not yet. Just the pressure of a knife you couldn't see, and the knowledge that at any moment it might slip in between your ribs. Cole didn't say a word. On the drive back, the note from Voss sat on the dashboard like a curse, its single sentence burning deeper the longer it stayed. Diesel laid his head across Cole's thigh, silent, but not relaxed. He was picking up on it too. The way the forest around them no longer felt like home, the way the shadows seemed to watch. Voss wasn't just nearby. He was inside their rhythm, inside their minds. Back at the cabin, Samira read the note once, then crumpled it without a word. Travis stared at the fire, arms crossed, jaw tight. "He's baiting us," Samira said finally. "No," Cole replied. "He's testing us, trying to see what breaks first. Our timing, our trust, or our mission." But something deeper churned inside him. Voss had written one line, but that line came from somewhere, and if he had Cole's file, he had more, which meant someone was feeding him intel from places the public couldn't access. That narrowed it down. That night, Cole opened a secure drive he hadn't touched in years. It was a backup he kept for insurance, something he made the night before his last mission overseas. Inside were 2 folders, one labeled Red Sky, the other Echo Gate. Both Black Ops files, both involving shadow contractors, both sealed under non-disclosure threat. And in both, Darwin Stratagem's name appeared. Buried, but there, with Samira. Watching over his shoulder, he decrypted the oldest folder. Red Sky, a failed operation in Helmand Province. What started as a village extraction turned into a bloodbath. The mission report claimed it was a miscommunication with Allied forces, but Cole had always suspected it was a cover. The files now proved it. Weapons listed as recovered from insurgents were never on U.S. supply ledgers. The serial numbers matched. Gear from a non-existent manufacturer based in South Carolina, Shell Company. Dig deeper. The front company led to Darwin Stratagem, and then came the document that stopped them both. A transport manifest from a decommissioned military base. Listed cargo, high-grade ammunition, night vision optics, encrypted field radios. Destination, Operation Iron Warden. Next to that, client, Voss Holdings, a known subsidiary of Darwin Stratagem. Travis let out a low whistle when he saw it. "They've been planning this for years. Longer," Samira said. "The Iron Vultures aren't just a gang, they're a prototype." The words hung in the room like fog. Prototype. It explained the discipline, the structure, the rapid growth. Who began planting charges in the supports. Samira's voice crackled in his earpiece. "You've got 4 minutes. Make them count." Cole and Diesel crept deeper into the storage wing. There, stacked between steel crates and racked rifles, was a small security room. He slipped inside and plugged in a drive. Samira's software kicked in, bypassing firewalls in seconds. Files flashed across the screen. Purchase logs, destination manifests, encrypted emails tagged with government domains. Cole copied them all. And then came the sound, a motorcycle. Outside, fast, rider. He was here. Cole pulled the drive and nodded to Travis. "Light it up." Outside, as the first explosion shook the grain silo, Cole turned to see Ryder's figure silhouetted in the flames, watching his empire fall in silence. Their eyes met. No words, no threats, only war. The silo burned until sunrise, a tower of ash silhouetted against the Tennessee sky. Cole stood on the ridge above it with Samira and Travis, smoke clinging to their clothes. The stolen files stored in 4 separate flash drives and already duplicated. It should have felt like a victory, but none of them smiled. Not after the lost radio transmission before they cut out. He's bringing in outside help. That whisper had come from a source Samira embedded deep in a civilian logistics board tied to Darwin's stratagem. She hadn't spoken much after it came through, just handed Cole a file. One name, no details, no photo, just a name that hit harder than any gunfire. Caleb Voss. Cole hadn't heard that name since Kandahar. He was a legend in the worst way. A former CIA shadow asset who'd gone off-grid years ago, operating in places too dark for official records. Cold, methodical, smart enough to make any operation look like an accident. The kind of man who never left prints, never used the same method twice. Last time Cole saw his face, it was from across a war table, being warned that if Voss ever turned, no one would see it coming until it was too late. Now, he was here. Samira broke the silence. He's already inside. Cole turned toward her. How do you know? She slid a set of surveillance photos onto the hood of the truck. Grainy, but clear enough. A man in a dark jacket, head down, entering the backlot of a freight company outside Jackson County. Same gait, same build, same posture. He flew in under a false name 3 nights ago, no known car. He paid cash for a burner phone, routed through a fake veteran housing program tied to stratagem. He's hunting us. Travis leaned against the fender, arms crossed, eyes hard. We just kicked a hornet's nest, didn't we? No, Cole said. We burned it. Now they're sending the snake. They pulled back from the site immediately, relocated everything. Gear, drives, radios. Their original fallback point was now compromised. Samira insisted on splitting routes and travel times, and no one argued. Diesel rode with Cole, eyes alert as ever, sensing the change in the air. That night, they met in a church basement 4 counties west, one of their trusted outposts, cold, damp, but safe. Claire and Beck were already there. The news of the attack on the silo had spread faster than any radio broadcast. People were scared, but they were waking up. That part mattered. But when Cole explained who was coming next, the room changed. Samira laid out Voss's background on a whiteboard. Disappearances, silent kills, a documented ability to dismantle entire cells without drawing attention. She drew a red circle around the word that mattered most, counterinsurgency. He knows how we operate, she said. He studied men like Cole, me, you, all of us. And he'll use that against us. What's the plan? Beck asked. We don't wait for him, Cole said. We make the first move. They started with the security sweep. All outposts, all safe houses, re-verified encryption layers, cross-checked local cell tower pings. Within 6 hours, Samira found anomalies in 3 separate locations. 2 were minor, likely mistakes. But the third? Someone's already listening, she said. It was a remote cabin outside of Glenview. A relay node had been spliced into the generator line. No cameras, no obvious gear. Just a silent relay, sending low-frequency transmissions every 4 minutes. Buried tech, government level. Cole turned away from the view and walked back toward the cabin. Inside, the others were already awake. Travis was hunched over the workbench, assembling detonators with a pot of black coffee at his side. Samira sat at the table, laptop open, headphones around her neck, scrolling through intercepted messages with focused eyes. They're spooked, she said without looking up. That fire at the warehouse, it made ripples. They're moving locations, changing routes, cutting chatter, but they slipped up. She tapped a folder on the screen. We found their weapons depot. Cole stepped closer. A satellite image, flickered into view. An old grain silo west of the county line, surrounded by fields and open air. No cover. No nearby witnesses. Just one long gravel road winding through dead crops to a structure humming with activity. It was risky, but it was perfect. How secure, he asked. Minimal on the outside. But they've fortified the interior. From what we're seeing, they've got armed guards inside, steel reinforcements on the entry points, and infrared sensors along the south wall. It's their main supply hub now. Cole folded his arms, thinking, if we take that out, we cut off their power and force Ryder into the open, Samira added. He can't afford to lose inventory, not if he's on the payroll of someone. Higher up, Travis looked up from his wiring. We blow that place, we better make it count. One shot, no second chances, and we'll be going in hot. They'll have a response team no more than 5 minutes away. Then we don't give them 5, Cole said. He laid a map on the table, marked entry points, fallback paths, supply routes, timing. The plan formed piece by piece, Samira on overwatch, covering the entry teams from a nearby ridge. Travis, planting the explosives along the structural beams, Cole leading the breach. They'd go in under darkness, hit hard, hit fast, and be gone before the first siren cracked the air. But it wasn't enough. We're not just going after hardware, Cole said. We need intel, files, shipment logs, anything that connects. This depot to Darwin's stratagem. Samira nodded slowly. I'll need 5 minutes inside their systems, 10 if it's encrypted. 5 it is, Cole said. The next 48 hours were spent preparing. Travis checked and rechecked the timers, molded shaped charges, packed emergency kits. Samira rehearsed her positions in the hills, calculated angles, and memorized fallback routes. Cole took Diesel on patrol every morning and night, watching for drones, scouts, tails. They found 2, one near the stream bed, another by the main road, both young, both amateurs. Cole sent them running with a warning shot into the trees. They regrouped the evening before the hit, tension settling like dust around the cabin. No one joked. No one wasted time. Even Diesel moved with purpose, no longer the limping shell they'd pulled from hell, but a dog with fire back in his step. He sat beside Cole as they ran through the plan one last time. At one point, Samira looked up. What happens if Ryder doesn't show? He will, Cole said. He's got too much to lose. He'll either come to protect the depot or retaliate when it's gone. Either way, we'll be ready. That night, while the others slept, Cole stepped outside with Diesel and walked. The edge of the forest. The stars blinked through the canopy, cold and distant. He thought of the day they took Diesel, of the nights in that Afghan cave where he'd held the dog's head after an IED blast and thought he'd die in his arms. And now here they were, side by side again, blood in their mouths, ghosts behind their eyes, still fighting. We finish. This, Cole whispered, no matter what it takes. Diesel nudged his leg and looked out into the dark. At 0300 hours they moved. The gravel road to the silo was quiet, too quiet. They parked a mile out and approached on foot, splitting into 3 paths. Samira vanished into the brush without a sound. Travis moved low and fast, hugging the tree line. Cole advanced straight down the road with Diesel at his side, both cloaked in shadow. At 03 Wasafin, the first guard slumped to the ground with a silent dart from Samira's rifle. At 0320, Travis breached the silo's side access panel. At 0322, Cole and Diesel slipped inside. The walls echoed faintly with distant voices. 2 men near the back, laughing about a shipment delay, unaware their world was about to change. Cole nodded once to Travis. Travis arrived before sunrise, face darker than usual, a rifle slung across his shoulder. "We going loud?" he asked. "Not yet," Cole said. "We don't have her location. If we storm the wrong place, they'll kill her out of spite." Samira was hunched over her laptop, scanning chatter. "Ryder wants us angry, uncoordinated. This is pressure tactics. We need to be smarter than them." An hour later, a radio call came through from the safe house in Ashfield. A man, possibly Vulture, had been spotted near the train yard again. Same pattern. No insignia, tinted car windows. They hadn't expected anyone to be watching at that hour. But Rosa had pulled the cameras offline early, fixed them herself, and patched the feed to Samira's secure drive. There, on the grainy footage, was the man with the scar. The same one the boy described, walking with a limp and carrying a case. "That's our thread," Cole said. "They followed it for the next 14 hours. Every gas station, every camera in a 3-county stretch that hadn't been fried or paid off. Piece by piece, Samira triangulated the route. By late afternoon, they had a lead. A warehouse just outside of Parsons Bluff, isolated and marked on the old county development records as condemned. Travis looked at the map. One way in, one way out. Not great odds. They're expecting a frontal assault, Samira said. We give them one, but we hit from behind, Cole added. He contacted Beck and his team. 2-man diversion, timed with the main approach. Nothing fancy. They couldn't risk an all-out firefight with Mariah inside. That night, they moved. The woods near the warehouse were thick and dark. The leaves crackled too easily under boots, and the smell of old oil clung to the air. Cole moved first, Samira beside him, both cloaked in night gear. Diesel waited at the fallback point, ears twitching, pacing restlessly. From the tree line, they watched as 3 bikers loitered near the gate, one smoking, one on lookout, and one pacing with a shotgun. Further in, the dim lights of the warehouse revealed shadows, at least 4 more inside. Travis's voice came through the comms, low and calm. Ready on your mark. Beck, Cole whispered. Copy that. Explosives are in place. Cole nodded to Samira. Seconds later, the silence. Shattered with a blast near the south fence. Just enough to scatter, not enough to wound. The guards scrambled, shouting, rushing toward the commotion. Cole and Samira moved like ghosts, slipping through the gap in the chain-link fence. Inside, the warehouse stank of mold and sweat. They moved from shadow to shadow until they found her Mariah. She was tied to a chair, bruised but conscious, her eyes wide as they met Cole's. He raised a finger to his lips. 2 guards remained inside, one pacing, one asleep with a rifle across his lap. Samira took the one by the door. 2 steps, 1 quiet click, and the man crumpled like a bag of grain. Cole walked straight toward the second. The man startled awake, reaching for his weapon. 2. Late. Cole's elbow met his face, his knee followed. The rifle skidded across the floor, useless. Is she okay? Samira called. Cole cut the ropes. Mariah gasped, the pain from moving rushing back into her limbs. I'm here, Cole said, voice soft now. You're safe. Mariah clutched his arm, her voice hoarse. My son, he's with us. You're going home. They slipped out the same way they came. Quiet, clean. Behind them, Travis rigged the last explosive on a fuel drum before falling back to the tree line. The fireball lit up the night sky. No deaths. Just a message. We found her. We're watching, and we are not afraid of you. As Cole helped Mariah into the truck, she gripped his hand tight. They carved something into the wall where they kept me. They wanted me to see it. Cole met her eyes. What was it? She swallowed. Your dog is just the beginning. The morning air was brittle with silence. Cole stared out over the hills behind the cabin, the sunrise bleeding red through a curtain of fog that clung to the treetops. Mariah was resting inside, safe for now. Her son curled against her side in a makeshift cot. Diesel sat beside Cole, upright and still, gaze fixed on the woods as if waiting for something unseen. They'd crossed a line last night, not because they took Mariah, but because they'd threatened something sacred. Innocence, family, hope. The vultures didn't just want control. They wanted domination through fear. He didn't speak to anyone on the ride back. He sat in the bed of the truck with Diesel beside him, watching the pine trees blur by. The dog's posture had changed again. More alert, eyes scanning the tree line. They both knew it now. This wasn't a warning. It was the beginning of a hunt. That afternoon, Cole gathered every local leader who'd answered their call in the past 10 days. Claire, a retired Marine named Beck from Ashfield. Rosa, a teacher who ran a soup kitchen turned safe house. They met in a mechanic's garage with the bay doors closed and the lights off. Maps covered the hoods of 2 old trucks. Samira pointed out the 3 most vulnerable locations: schools, supply sheds, satellite posts. Travis explained how the fire had started, showing melted remnants of an incendiary device that wasn't homemade. Military grade, he said. This wasn't some punk with a gas can. This was someone trained. Cole stood silent until the room quieted. Then he pointed to a new map. It wasn't a topographical layout or a satellite view. It was a flowchart. Names, call signs, companies, at ye. The top was Darwin's stratagem. This is the link, Cole said. Ryder's not just trying to scare us. He's working off a clock. They've got objectives, and we're interfering. Samira added, every act of violence now, it's sanctioned. Somewhere someone is funding this escalation. Beck leaned forward, squinting. So what the hell do? We can't go public. Nobody's going to believe a bunch of civilians over a government contractor. No, Cole said. They won't believe it. He held up a USB stick. But they'll see it. Inside were video files, drone footage of the Iron Vultures moving crates with Darwin insignia, audio recordings of Ryder mentioning supply chain integrity. Copies of payments routed through shell corporations. Get this to the right people, Cole continued, and we fracture their shield. We make it clear they're not untouchable. That night, the group scattered, each carrying fragments of the files, each given a drop point. Diesel slept restlessly at Cole's feet, ears twitching with every creak. Outside, the forest was too quiet. Samira perched on the porch with her rifle across her lap. Travis booby-trapped the perimeter with makeshift sensors. Cole didn't sleep. He sat with a journal and a Sharpie writing names, the ones they'd lost, the ones they couldn't lose. When the knock came, it was almost morning. Samira didn't hesitate. She opened the door with her weapon raised, but lowered it fast. It was a boy, 9, maybe 10 years old, barefoot, dirty, terrified. They took her, he said, breath ragged. They took my mom, said to give you this. He handed Cole a folded piece of paper. There was only one word written on it. Payback. The paper in Cole's hand felt heavier than it should. Payback, just one word. Unloaded, brutal word scrawled in a jagged hand, and handed off by a boy too young to have seen the things now stamped into his eyes. Cole crouched to the boy's level, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. Where'd they take her? He asked, voice steady. The boy shook his head. They had masks. One had a scar here. He pointed beneath his left eye. And they said if you came looking, they'd hurt her worse. Behind him, Samira had already activated the encrypted line to Travis and Beck. She didn't need to be told. A civilian abduction changed everything. It wasn't just about territory or pressure anymore. This was personal. She's a mother, Samira muttered under her breath. She's not even part of the ops. This is a message. Cole's jaw tightened. That's why they chose her. Her name was Mariah Jensen. 34, single mom, community leader, and one of the first to volunteer her barn to store supplies. She'd patched Diesel's wounds the first night they brought him back. She didn't ask questions, didn't care about revenge. She just wanted her town safe. Now she was gone. Cole stared out at the tree line while the boy slept curled up on the couch. Diesel pressed close like a silent guardian. The room felt colder somehow. The fire didn't crackle like it used to. It just hissed and whispered, echoing the thoughts in his head. If they were willing to take a woman who had nothing to do with their fight, there were no rules anymore. And he knew what came next. He'd seen it overseas. Innocence became leverage. Family became bargaining chips. Honor, the final casualty. They went north the next day. Travis had made contact with a couple running a community center out of an abandoned high school. The Vultures had started demanding protection money from them, promising security in exchange for silence. When the couple refused, someone torched their shed. They hadn't called the cops. They knew better. Instead, they waited, surrounded by boxes of donated supplies and a gymnasium-turned-shelter for displaced families. Cole met them on the basketball court. His military presence made them stiffen at first, but his story made them lean in. "We're not asking you to fight," he told them. "We're asking you to prepare, to stay ready, because when this goes loud, people are going to need leaders." The woman, Claire, looked around at the volunteers moving boxes in silence. "We've been waiting for someone to stand up." Cole handed her a radio, shortwave, coded. You're not alone anymore. Samira worked the networks, reaching out. Through encrypted lines, touching base with former intelligence agents and quiet watchdogs. She mapped digital infrastructure, security cameras the vultures hadn't disabled properly, audio leaks from unencrypted phones, transaction logs that painted a crude but useful picture. The Iron Vultures weren't just a gang anymore. They were a system, one part criminal, one part paramilitary. And systems could be mapped, systems could be broken. Travis trained locals where he could, set up booby traps that looked like farm tools, showed teenage volunteers how to rig alarms using fishing line and beer cans. He was vulgar, loud and messy, but they listened. Not because he was likable, he wasn't, but because he made fear feel like something you could fight. By the end of the week, they had 5 communities with radios, 3 encrypted maps, and 2 caches of weapons stashed under false floors. And behind hay bales, it wasn't much, but it was a start. And Diesel was walking again. He followed Cole to the tree line every morning now, no leash. Still stiff, still scarred, but alert, ready. As if he remembered more than just the warehouse, as if he remembered the war. One night, Cole and Samira sat by the fire outside, the woods thick with summer sounds. She stared at the flames, quiet, then asked without looking at him, "You think we'll get them all?" "No," Cole said. "But enough." She nodded. That was all they needed, enough to break the machine, enough to make Ryder bleed. And when that day came, it wouldn't be with flags or speeches. It would be with fire, steel, and silence. The flames rose fast, too fast for it to have been random. Cole smelled the gasoline before he saw the smoke. It curled up into the sky behind the old Lutheran community center, choking the moonlight and painting the sky orange. He gunned the engine of the truck as Samira leaned out the passenger side. Window with binoculars, scanning for movement, for traps, for survivors. Travis had already jumped out before the truck came to a full stop, boots pounding the dirt as he shouted into the dark. The fire had taken hold in the back hall, the section they'd converted into sleeping quarters for the volunteers. Cole slammed his shoulder into the side door, the hinges snapping with the third blow. Inside, the smoke hit like a wall. Diesel growled low behind him, hesitant but ready. Samira followed in a flash, moving low and fast, her scarf pulled tight over her mouth. They didn't find bodies, but the message was clear. In the front hall, nailed to the frame of a blackened bulletin board, was a piece of wood with a vulture. Claw painted in blood-red spray. Beneath it, scrawled in marker, were 5 words. "You can't protect them forever." Travis ripped it down and hurled it into the fire. "Son of a—" "Not here!" Cole snapped. "Not now!" They got the blaze. Under control by dawn, but the damage was done. Smoke had poisoned the sleeping rooms, charred the supplies and cracked the walls. Claire stood with her arms around 2 younger volunteers, her face streaked with ash, but her eyes locked on Cole like she expected him to fix the world. "We were getting stronger," she said softly. "We were doing everything right. They know that," Samira answered. That morning Cole stood over the smoldering wreckage, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles turned pale. This wasn't just retaliation, it was a chess move. Deliberate, calculated, meant to trigger a response. Samira set up a thermal drone out by the ridge. From the screen, they watched figures moving in and out of a compound near the tracks. Motorcycles, trucks, a few SUVs without plates. The men inside wore vests, but not all of them were patched. Some were dressed like ex-military. Haircuts, postures, gear, mercs. The kind of men who'd once taken orders the same way Cole had, but now took payment instead. They counted 9 vehicles over the course of 2 hours. 4 left. 3 came back with new crates. Samira snapped. "Photos." Travis tagged license plates. Cole wrote it all down in his scrawl. Tight, deliberate. After 2 nights, they'd built a map of operations. The vultures were using the old train yard as a hub. From there, weapons were funneled east and west, guarded by gang muscle and guided by tactical minds. Not just criminals, not just bikers, but trained men. And Ryder Nash was the linchpin. One. Night, around 2 a.m. Cole returned to the cabin alone. The others were asleep. Diesel stirred at his approach. Cole knelt by his side, one hand resting lightly on the dog's ribs. They were thinner than they'd been, but healing. The eyes, though those told a different story. There was pain behind them, the kind that didn't come from wounds, the kind that came from being abandoned. "I didn't leave you," Cole said softly. "They took you, and I should have known they'd come after me through you." Diesel nudged his hand with his nose, weak but deliberate. It was enough. Cole rose and walked to the table where the files were spread. He grabbed one of the burner phones and made a single call. A voice answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd stop playing defense," the voice said. A woman, cold, clipped. "Government. I need access to the Lawnwood archives." Cole said, "Not happening. Those are sealed." "Then make it happen." The line went silent. "You're being watched, Merrick. Your name's on a list now." "It's been there for years," he said. "This ends with Nash and whoever's protecting him." He hung up without waiting for a reply. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves rattled against the glass. But inside, that cabin, something had changed. Cole Merrick had stopped surviving. He was starting to fight back, and the vultures had no idea what they'd just woken up. The following week unfolded like the beginning of a campaign, quiet, deliberate, and full of silent preparation. Cole, Samira, and Travis didn't take direct action. Not yet. They watched, listened, learned. Every move Ryder Nash made, every truck that left the compound, every call intercepted through backdoor frequencies. They logged it all. Resistance wasn't built in a day, and Cole knew that better than anyone. You had to win hearts before battles. Their first stop was a farming village nestled on the edge of Colby County. The kind of town with one stoplight and a gas station, where locals talked politics, the weather, and not much else. But underneath that surface was tension. Fear lingered in the way doors closed too fast and curtains moved when trucks with blacked out plates passed by. Cole recognized the signs. Oppression didn't need a uniform, it just needed silence. They went in quiet. No weapons, no confrontations. Samira played the stranger angle, chatting up gas station attendants and waitresses. Travis helped an old man repair the shutter on his tool shed and came back with 3 stories about disappearances. Cole talked to the sheriff, retired, overweight, and nursing a shoulder injury from a car accident that had vultures written all over it. "They don't knock," the sheriff said, sipping weak coffee from a cracked mug. "They just show up, and if someone talks back, they stop showing up. Sometimes that's worse." Cole slid a photo across the table. "Diesel, taken years ago, alert, unscarred. You seen this dog?" The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, few months back. One of the biker boys had him in the back of a truck. Dog looked half dead. You connected to him?" Cole nodded. The sheriff leaned back, sighing. "Son, I don't know what you're planning, but you're not the first to try standing up to them. Just be careful. These aren't punks. They know exactly what they're doing." That night, Cole stood under the stars behind the cabin. Diesel beside him, breathing easier now. He was healing, slowly. A limp remained, but the fire had returned to his eyes, the kind that told Cole he wasn't alone in this fight. Samira Halim stood there, wrapped in a worn coat, eyes sharp as ever. Ghost, the sniper, his old friend, the one they never found in any official record because she was never officially there. "You always this slow to open a door?" she said. Stepped aside. Inside, she looked around the cabin, then down at Diesel. Her gaze softened for a moment. "Damn," she whispered. "They really did it." Cole nodded. They did. She set down a backpack. From it, she pulled photos, blueprints, burner phones. Everything about the iron vultures she'd gathered over the last 2 years. "You really ready for this?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed at the map on the wall. Red pins dotted the county. Warehouses, transport routes, known. "Associates. Ryder Nash is running more than a biker gang. He's logistics now, distribution. They're the ones moving black market gear to veteran communities, targeting the ones who talk too much." Samira's jaw tightened. "So they're the knife, not the hand." "Exactly." You called Travis. He's driving east now. Should be here by dawn. She looked at him long and hard. This isn't a mission. This is revenge. Cole didn't blink. This is justice. Outside, the night wind howled through the trees. Diesel, finally asleep, let out a deep exhale, the kind that said, home or not, they weren't safe here anymore. Inside. The war was beginning again. Not on foreign soil this time, but here, at home on American dirt. And this time, Cole wasn't bound by rules or orders. Just one promise: no one chains a soldier's partner and walks away untouched. The sun hadn't crested the ridge when Travis Gage pulled up in his rusted black Chevy Suburban, its grille half missing and the back weighed down with crates covered in tarps. He climbed out with a grunt, stretching as if the road had tried to crush his spine. Same old combat boots, same cocky grin. His beard was a little grayer, but his swagger hadn't faded an inch. He slapped the dust off his cargo pants and looked up at the cabin with a lopsided smile. You gonna help me unload, or just stand there looking like a haunted statue? He called. Cole stepped off the porch without a word, nodding toward the back of the truck. Travis opened the hatch and pulled back the tarp. Beneath it, nestled in foam and heavy latches, were enough explosives to turn a warehouse into a crater. Next to them, a pair of M4s, 2 Glock 17s, and something wrapped in canvas that Travis treated like a newborn. Tell me you didn't drive across 3 states with this much heat, Samira said, emerging from the cabin, arms crossed and unimpressed. You want a fight or a polite conversation? Travis replied, popping a toothpick in his mouth. Cole didn't smile, but there was a flicker in his eyes that hadn't been there the night before. They brought the gear inside, moving through the routines, without needing to speak. Years of service had forged a rhythm between them. Cole the planner, Samira the scalpel, Travis the sledgehammer. Diesel, still recovering, lifted his head briefly from the corner where Cole had laid extra blankets. His ears twitched as he watched. The 3 of them move around like clockwork. Samira laid out her equipment on the kitchen table: maps, drone photos, burner phone logs. She'd been tracking the Iron Vultures for months, ever since whispers about former contractors getting muscled out started circling veteran boards. They're not hiding, she said. They're expanding. 3 new compounds in the last 60 days. 1 in Jackson County, 1 in Ashfield. The 3rd close to the old train yard. Looks like they're trying to control supply lines, guns, transport routes, maybe even surveillance networks. Cole circled the train yard with a red marker. That's where they took Diesel. The chain had old freight grease on it, not something you'd find in a warehouse. That train yard's been dead for 20 years, perfect for off-grid torture. Travis whistled low. So what's the plan? We gonna sneak in and drop a couple of their motorcycles into the river, or... We talking bigger? Cole didn't look up. We track, observe, confirm links to Darwin's stratagem. We make it count. Samira added, if we go too early, we're the criminals. We need evidence, names, faces, records. Travis groaned. So it's one of those missions. Fine. But I'm blowing up something eventually. That's non-negotiable. They started their recon that evening. Travis marked fuel depots and weapon storage. Cole wrote a single word in the middle of the table. Payback. The war had begun again, but this time it wasn't for a flag. It was for Diesel. It was for the past. And it was going to end on Cole Merrick's terms. The road back to the cabin was still covered in frost when Cole pulled in, the early morning sun cutting through the tree line like broken glass. His knuckles were still raw, blood dried on his shirt collar, and Diesel hadn't moved from the couch since he left. The dog's eyes tracked him as he stepped through the door, but even those looked tired, like he'd seen more than any animal should. Cole sat on the floor next to him, his back against the wall, silent. He stayed there for almost an hour. The wind outside rattled the loose siding, and a hawk cried somewhere in the distance. But inside the cabin, there was only the sound of Diesel's breathing and the occasional pop of the wood stove. Cole had been a soldier long enough to know when he was being hunted, and this wasn't a warning. It was the start of something. Coordinated, personal. He reached for the small duffel bag under the coffee table, the one he never unpacked fully, no matter how long he stayed in one place. Inside were fragments of who he used to be, folded orders, half-burned photos, a thumb, drive labeled Fallout, and a sealed envelope marked with a Pentagon insignia. But it was the list tucked inside the notebook that he focused on now. Handwritten, only 5 names. Ryder's was one of them. Cole had made this list in a hospital room in Ramstein after his final deployment, while the VA stitched his shoulder, and the army gave him medals for things he'd rather forget. He'd started piecing together the pattern. A defense contractor, Darwin Stratagem, had funded black ops through back channels, selling surplus weapons through rogue operatives. Ryder had been one of them. Cole filed the report. Then the report disappeared. His clearance was revoked within weeks. His discharge came with a smile and a thank you for his silence. They buried the truth. And someone had paid Ryder Nash to keep it buried. Cole stood, walked to the back room. The locker there hadn't been touched in years. Inside, wrapped in an old army blanket, was his gear. The plates, the harness, the weapons he kept off paper. He laid it all out on the bed like a ritual. Then he picked up the satellite phone. It took only 2 calls. The first was to a number in Arizona that rang 5 times before a voice answered with a single word. Ghost. "Cole Merrick," he said, "calling it in." There was silence on the other end. Then the voice came back, colder than before. "Copy that." The second call was longer, more difficult. He hadn't spoken to Travis Gage since they buried. "Lieutenant Colonel Hooper in Arlington." Travis picked up on the second ring. "You alive?" Travis asked. "Barely." "Tell me when and where." "Here. Soon. Bring what you've got." "I always do." Cole ended the call. No goodbyes. No details. They all understood what it meant when Cole called. He didn't call lightly. By nightfall he had stripped the cabin of anything non-essential. The guns were loaded. The side roads mapped. Surveillance gear was patched into old satellite relays. And Diesel had eaten. Not much, but enough to lift his head and lick Cole's hand. A start. As the fire burned low, Cole opened the envelope with the Pentagon seal and read the letter inside. It was a copy, a memo from a classified hearing. Names redacted, dates missing. But he knew the code phrases: disavowed asset, critical breach, non-attributable resolution. They had tried to erase what happened, but the Iron Vultures weren't just some gang, they were the muscle, and Darwin's Stratagem was still pulling strings. Cole leaned back in the chair, the wood groaning under his weight. His fingers tightened around a cigar he hadn't smoked in 3 years. He lit it now, watching the smoke drift toward the rafters. He wasn't going to run. They'd taken Diesel. They'd put scars on him. They'd chained him in a warehouse like some message wrapped in brutality. That was a mistake, because Cole Merrick wasn't afraid of ghosts. He'd spent most of his life living among them. A knock came at the door around midnight. No headlights, no engine. Cole rose, hand already on his sidearm. Diesel let out a low growl. Not pain this time, but instinct. He opened the door, and then stood there for a long time, staring into the flames like they might offer answers. They didn't, but the heat reminded him he was still breathing. That mattered. He didn't call anyone that night. Didn't touch his phone. He sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a cup of bitter coffee and stared at names. Names of people he'd served with, names of those who owed him favors, names of those he still trusted, not many, but a few. His finger paused over one in particular, Travis Gage. Explosives. Brash, unpredictable, but loyal when it counted. Another, Samira Halim. Sniper, calm under pressure, ghost-like movements. If anyone could vanish and still leave a mark, it was her. Cole circled both names. By morning he had made his decision. No more hiding, no more waiting for the next ambush. The Vultures had declared war, and war was something he knew how to win. He made the first call from a burner phone wrapped in duct tape. The connection was scratchy, but the voice on the other end came through clear. "I was wondering when you'd call," Samira said. "How fast can you get here?" Cole asked. There was a pause, then, "Give me a day." Next was Travis. The line rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "Merrick, you're still alive? I need you," Cole said. "You in?" A dry chuckle. "You got enemies?" "Yeah." "Then, I'm in." They were the only calls he made. That afternoon, he drove to the nearest public library 3 counties over and logged into a secure military forum he hadn't touched in years. The username still worked. So did the inbox. One new message dated just last week. It was unsigned, but he recognized the phrasing. The kind of language used by people who knew surveillance wasn't just possible, it was expected. The message was short, vague, but the implication was clear. The Iron Vultures were tied to a defense contractor, Lornwood Holdings. He hadn't heard that name in years, but it all came rushing back now. Back in Afghanistan, Cole had led a raid on a supposedly empty depot outside Sangin. What they found was anything but empty. Illegal weapons caches, unmarked. Crates, high-grade military equipment. The kind of gear that didn't belong to anyone except Uncle Sam, but it wasn't Uncle Sam supplying those caches. It was Lornwood. Cole had filed the report, filed it loud, and within a week he was off. The team, discharged with honors and a handshake, but the real mission, the investigation, gone, smothered. His commanding officer transferred. The photos he'd submitted disappeared from the case archive. He hadn't thought about it in years. Now it was. Right here on his front lawn, wearing leather vests and leaving scars on his dog. He stood over Diesel again that evening, the low hum of jazz vinyl crackling through the cabin speakers. Diesel opened his eyes, faint, glassy. "You were the key," Cole whispered. "They wanted me to see you like that. They wanted to send a message." Diesel shifted, let out a weak huff. Cole knelt beside him. "But they forgot what happens. When you threaten someone who's already lost everything." He grabbed the file off the counter, Lornwood photos, copies of the report he'd saved. He made duplicates, burned them to USBs, printed them, hid them. They weren't just going after him. They were covering their tracks, eliminating threats. The Vultures weren't some low-level gang. They were enforcers, cleaners, operatives with a mandate and nothing to lose, but neither did Cole. That night, headlights appeared in the distance. 2 sets. He watched them from the ridge, a rifle slung over his shoulder. Samira stepped out first. Black. Jacket, desert boots, her hair tied back. Her eyes scanned the tree line before she even spoke. "Quiet place," she said. "Not quiet enough," Cole replied. Then Travis, loud as ever, clapping Cole on the back like they were meeting at a barbecue. "You didn't tell me it was a full reunion." Travis grinned, looking at Diesel. "Damn, they really did a number on him." "Yeah," Cole said quietly, "and now we're gonna do one back." They walked inside together. No one asked why, no one asked how, because each of them knew what it meant to be hunted by shadows. Wearing government suits, each had faced down death, and each carried the kind of scars that didn't always bleed but never healed. Around the table they laid out maps, warehouse locations, gang movement, intel from locals. Samira tracked patterns, not just temporarily, but forever altered, and that meant war. The next morning, Cole drove into town. No guns, no threats, just observation. He parked across from an old auto garage with a faded Iron Vultures MC emblem painted across its siding. It was half covered by tarps now, but the wings of the Vulture were still visible through the grime. 2 bikers leaned against the fence, smoking, laughing. Cole recognized one from the night before, the wiry one with the snake tattoo wrapped around his throat. He didn't look at them long. He didn't need to. He walked into the local feed store like it was any other day. The old man behind the counter, Frank, gave him a long look. "You got trouble, Cole?" Frank asked. Cole met his eyes. "Not yet." "You got that look," Frank said. "The one you had when you came back from the war. The kind of look that means someone's gonna bleed." Cole grabbed a bag of antibiotics, vet-approved, and a protein mix for Diesel. "Thanks, Frank." "You watch yourself," Frank said, voice dropping. "Those Vultures, They're not just passing through, they're building something here. Bought up the old lumberyard, warehouse on 4th even. The diner's new owner's one of theirs. Cole paused at the door. They ever come around here? Frank hesitated, then nodded. Last week, said they'd be back with a business proposal. I told him to get lost. Cole left without a word. On the walk back to the truck, he saw them move. 5 vultures now. They crossed the street slowly, deliberate. The snake-necked biker led them, grinning. Well, well. Look who crawled out of the woods, he said. Thought we'd see you again. Cole didn't stop walking. You deaf soldier boy? One of the others barked. Cole reached his truck, opened the door. That's when the first punch landed. He hadn't seen it. A 6th one, behind the truck. The blow cracked across his jaw, knocking him sideways into the gravel. His vision blurred, but his body reacted faster than thought. He kicked the attacker's knee, hard, heard the buckle, then rolled up into a crouch. 2 more rushed. He dropped one with a left hook to the ribs. The other got a hand around his throat, but Cole twisted into the grip, driving his elbow up into the man's chin. Enough! A voice barked from the edge of the street. Ryder Nash. He stepped into view like a general surveying the wreckage. Leather vest, gloves, and that twisted grin. Easy, boys, he said. Let him breathe. Cole was bleeding from the mouth now. Lip split. One of the vultures coughed from the ground. Ryder looked over the damage like a disappointed teacher. You could have just walked away, Merrick, Ryder said. I gave you that chance. Cole wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. You touched my dog. Ryder smiled. And I'll touch worse. You exposed things that weren't yours to touch back then. And now the people backing me, they want that silence paid for. Cole didn't speak. You don't get it, do you? Ryder said, stepping closer. This town, this whole stretch of county, it's ours now. And you're a ghost. No one's gonna come for you. Cole stared back, eyes cold. Good. Ryder raised an eyebrow. No one to get hurt, Cole added. Then he moved again. Fast, unexpected. He grabbed the snake-necked vulture by the collar and slammed him headfirst into the truck's hood. The impact left a dent and a smear of blood. Next time, Cole said low, eyes locked with Ryder's, I don't walk away. And then he did just that, climbed into the truck, engine growling like Diesel used to, and rolled away, leaving the gang behind in a swirl of dust and tension. They hadn't expected a fight. They hadn't expected someone not afraid to lose. Everything they would now. The road curved like a scar through the Tennessee backwoods as Cole drove fast and silent, the weight of the morning's ambush riding in the truck with him. Diesel stirred in the back seat, eyes half-lidded but watching, always watching. It had taken a toll on the dog to be moved again, but Cole knew staying in one place was more dangerous than driving wounded. That was the game now. Movement, surveillance, preparation. By the time they reached the cabin, the sky had dimmed into a purple bruise above the treetops. Cole eased the truck to a stop behind a cluster of dense brush and pine, not his usual spot. He carried Diesel inside, laid him down, on a bed of folded blankets near the fireplace. A dishonorable discharge report, torture allegations, all buried. Ryder dismounted slowly, his heavy boots crushing the gravel as he approached. Look at you, Ryder said with a grin. Cole Merrick, the ghost who came home. Cole didn't. Enter, you got the package, huh? Ryder gestured lazily toward the truck. Found your mutt. Cole's jaw clenched. Why? Ryder's eyes lit up, like he'd been waiting for the question. Because someone needs to remind you that you don't get to walk away clean. You made enemies, soldier. Big ones. Cole said nothing. The old habits returned easily. Calm breath, square stance, eyes always moving. 4 vultures flanked him. Now one by the tailgate, one on each side, one still on his bike recording. This is our territory now, Ryder said, his tone hardening. That farm of yours, that nice little quiet life, it's over. You want peace, you drive out of here and never look back. Or, he nodded toward the truck, you'll bury that dog twice. Cole's fists clenched at his sides. He hadn't come here looking for a fight, but they had just given him one. I'm not leaving, Cole said. His voice was low even. One of the vultures stepped forward, reaching for something under his vest. Cole moved first. Years of war had honed him into a blade, and blades don't forget how to cut. The biker never saw the elbow coming, crunched his jaw sideways as Cole pivoted and drove him backward into the dirt. The next one raised a bat, but Cole kicked the knee in before the swing landed. The leg snapped with a sickening crack. The third lunged. Cole ducked, twisted, and sent him flying over the hood of the truck. Ryder didn't move. He just stood there, smiling, watching. "You're good," Ryder said, almost admiringly. "But that's not what this is about. This wasn't a hit, Merrick. It was a warning." Cole's knuckles bled. His chest rose and fell with tight, controlled rage. "We'll be seeing you," Ryder added. "You've got something that belongs to us now." He whistled, and the remaining bikers pulled their wounded off the ground. Then they mounted and peeled away, engines roaring like war drums into the trees. Cole stood there for a moment, the silence roaring louder than the bikes. Then he turned to Diesel. The dog was sitting up now, barely, his eyes locked on his partner. "Yeah," Cole said, wiping blood from his mouth. "They've got a problem." The road home was quiet, too quiet for what Cole Merrick carried in. His chest. Diesel lay across the back seat, breathing shallowly but steady now, a blanket tucked around him and a bowl of water by his paws. Cole had always known peace was temporary, but tonight had made it personal. And personal made him dangerous. His cabin sat 10 miles outside the nearest town, tucked behind pine trees and shadowed hills. It had been a sanctuary. Until today, as he pulled up the dirt path, his headlights caught the familiar wood siding and rusted wind chimes swaying from the porch. But his eyes scanned the dark for anything out of place. He didn't park in the usual spot. He cut the engine and coasted the last few feet in neutral. Inside, the house smelled like cedar, coffee, and oil. He laid Diesel on the worn couch near the fireplace, lit only by the fading embers from this morning's fire. Diesel blinked up at him, one ear twitching as Cole knelt beside him. "We're not safe here," Cole said, voice low. "Not anymore." Diesel didn't need to understand the words. He understood the tone. The bond they'd forged through desert sand, smoke and gunfire was deeper than language. Cole moved through the cabin quickly now. He slid open the floorboard in the hallway and pulled out the lockbox, untouched for years. Inside were reminders of a past he'd tried to bury. His service pistol, a KA bar knife, old dog tags, and a battered notebook with names scribbled in code. One of those names was Ryder Nash. He remembered the file, Operation Grizzly Fall, a covert mission in Kandahar, where Ryder had been listed as a recon specialist, highly decorated, but pulled from duty after misconduct. The rumors were worse than the charges. Cole had flagged him during a debrief on illicit arms movement. That report had vanished before it could reach prosecution. Someone buried it, someone with reach. Now Ryder was back, and he had Diesel. For 4 years. The chain, the wounds, the look in Diesel's eyes. Ryder had wanted Cole to see it, to know he had lost something.